Johnson from David Allen IT Solutions. Thank you for coming this morning, Rebecca.
No problem. Thanks for having us, Ben. Thanks
Brilliant.
for organising. So, good morning, everybody. Yeah, morning. So, can you see the slideshow? I've got my screen shared. Yeah, great. So it's just what we're going to look at this morning is helping you to protect your business with regards to cybersecurity. Lots of businesses that we deal with are not totally aware of the full impact of cybersecurity and the incidents that can occur. And it doesn't need to be a daunting challenge for business owners. So many people think that cybersecurity doesn't apply to me. Maybe they think that their business is too small. So we wouldn't have anybody interested in having, attacking us or targeting us. But the statistics show that that isn't the case. And the statistics show that if you're an SME, or a SME, and you've got about a 1 in 2 chance that you will experience a cybersecurity breach at some point. I am just going to move this along. So why cybersecurity? Cybersecurity should be a priority, no matter the size of your business. And once upon a time, people thought, I've got antivirus software, so I'm okay, I'm protected. However, that isn't the case now. You really do need to have more security settings than just antivirus software installed. The UK GDPR law introduced a duty on all organisations to report personal data breaches to the ICO, that's the Information Commissioner's Office, within 72 hours of becoming aware of a data breach. Failure to do so can result in fines for those people responsible. So it's really important that you're aware of what happens if you are a victim to a cyber security incident or a data breach. And it's not just the monetary cost that damages your business and that's caused by a security breach, it's the reputational damage to your business. So customers will lose the trust in you. They might no longer wish to do business with you because they don't think that they're able to trust you to look after their data. So it's not just a monetary cost, it's the reputational damage to your business as well. So here at David Allen IT, we want to make it easy for people to understand how to protect your data against cyber attacks, just in the same way that you know how to protect your home against other types of crime. So we're really keen to get the word spread on cybersecurity. And in this presentation, we will provide guidance on cybersecurity that can save you time, hopefully some money, and even your business's reputation. So whilst we can't guarantee that we protect you from all types of cyber attacks, following our recommendations, you can significantly reduce the chances of your business becoming a victim of cybercrime. So just by following some easy steps. So the topics covered are easy to understand and hopefully, well, they cost very little to implement. So that's one of the key things. So what are the risks? So cybersecurity risk is the probability of exposure or loss resulting from a cyber attack or data breach on your business. Organisations are becoming more vulnerable to cyber threats due to increased reliance on computers, on your data, on your software, on your computer networks, and all of that's required to run your business. Risk management in cybersecurity helps ensure that your technology, your systems, your information, and your data are protected in the most appropriate way. And some of the statistics are quite shocking. So as the screen shows, 39% of businesses, UK businesses, identified a cyber attack last year. And of those 39%, the most common was a phishing attempts. One small business in the UK is successfully hacked every 19 seconds. Yeah, the statistics there are quite shocking. So, what are the different threat types? Many people that we speak to have heard of some of the terms that relate to cybersecurity, but a lot of people are like, I've heard of it, but I don't really understand what it means. So, we're just going to quickly run through a few of the key types that do affect businesses. So, data theft and identity theft, obviously, that's also known as information theft, and that's the illegal transfer of storage of personal, confidential, or financial information. Malware is a catch-all term for any type of malicious software designed to harm or exploit devices, services, or your computer network. And it's used by criminals to extract data so that they can then leverage that over your victims for financial gain. Ransomware, that's a type of malicious software designed to block access to a computer system or devices and the data that's held on it. And it's usually encrypted. So they encrypt the data, your data, until a ransom is paid. And there's been lots of examples of ransomware attacks in the press recently. Guardian newspaper was held to ransom in January. Royal Mail last month, a ransomware attack brought quite a lot of the Royal Mail services to a standstill. And they're just getting back to normal services in the last few weeks. It really has had such a massive impact on them. And reports do say that 82% of British firms which have been victims of ransomware attacks actually paid the hackers in order to get their data back. So it's very effective method of cybercrime for the criminals. Phishing, many people have heard of the term phishing but aren't quite sure what it is. So, phishing is when criminals use scam emails or text messages or phone calls to try and trick victims. And the aim is that they make you visit a website, which may lead you to then download a virus onto your computer or give access so that they can then retrieve your data. I bet most of you have been a victim of a phishing attack at some point. So your text message from, again, a Royal Mail one was doing a circulation about postage. Amazon phone calls. I bet somebody's received an Amazon phone call at some point. And again, it's a very successful way for the criminals, and they're actually making millions of pounds from that Amazon phone call scam. Watering hole attack, that's a computer attack strategy in which an attacker guesses or observes which websites a company often uses and then infects them with more malware. And eventually, some members of the targeted group will become infected. Denial of service or a DOS attack is an attack meant to shut down a machine or network, making it inaccessible to its intended users. So it's when a computer repeatedly sends requests to a server and it overloads the system, and it will eventually slow the system down and may eventually take the website offline. So lots of different cases and different aspects of cybersecurity, but there are some really simple steps, some really basic steps that you can take to protect your business. And following some of these steps against the most common types of cybercrime, they're easy to understand, they're cost effective, and whilst we can't guarantee protection from all types of cyber attack, it can show you how easy it is to protect your organization's data, assets, and reputation. So backing up your data, if you think about how much you rely on your business critical data, customer information, quotes, orders, payment information, and now if you imagine how long you will be able to operate without access to any of that. So all businesses, regardless of size, should take regular backups of your important data and make sure that it's backed up. preferably off-site, so you're keeping a copy of that data off-site, not within the your office or location. And by doing this, you're ensuring that your business can still function, that we can get that data back, and that you can still function if you were a victim of any kind of cyber security incident, or even just an impact of an incident such as if there is a flood, theft, or physical damage. It's just a way for you to get that information back, allowing you to quickly recover as a business. It's really important. It's also really important that it's not just left to one person, ideally. So it should be part of your everyday business process. And if it's left to one person, if they're ever off sick or they go on holiday, it's not ideal, and that process can fail, and that then puts the business at risk. So it's important that you have those backups and that process in place. Protect against malware. So ensure your antivirus software is installed and any software that you have is licensed and kept up to date, so that patching and keeping software up to date is one of the key elements. Prevent unnecessary app and software downloads. Only download apps and software from trusted sources such as Microsoft Store, and be careful and think about which apps you actually install, and ideally remove any software that you don't use off your device. Implement a patching policy to keep your IT up to date. So for example, Microsoft updates, software updates, patch management. Patch management fixes vulnerabilities on your software and that applications that are susceptible to cyber attacks. So thereby keeping on top of your patching helps your business to reduce the security risk. And lastly, controlling the USB drive and memory card usage. So it's about not allowing every member of staff to come in and plug a USB memory stick into your device and put that onto your network. It's just another security element, and there are settings that can block this from allowing people to do that. So one of the key things is just keeping your actual devices safe. Password protection. You'd be amazed how many people don't have passwords in place, so that when you boot up your laptop, you've got to put a PIN in or a password. Ensuring devices that are lost or stolen can be tracked. So software like Find My Device or Apple Find My Phone, if it's your mobile, using disk encryption. So if you have BitLocker, enable that, and that requires another security pin, or File Vault if you're using a Mac. Connecting to unknown Wi-Fi hotspots as well. So by connecting to an open network, potentially opens your device to anyone else on that same wireless network. And it's just been about being aware. Password protection. So some basic things that ideally you've maybe heard of, but you haven't yet implemented. Password protection using 2FA or MFA, multi-factor authentication. That's when it's got an extra level of security and you receive a passcode or a PIN to your mobile. You may use an authenticator app on your mobile to receive that as well. And just the strength of your passwords. Avoid predictable, guessable passwords, and also change all your default passwords, so that obviously devices, things like your home router, get those changed as well. Avoiding phishing attacks. So your staff, your employees are your first line of defense, and part of that is just building staff awareness. 97% of companies are targeted by email-based phishing attacks. And so if you can ensure that your staff know how to spot a phishing email, and that protects them from falling victim to a phishing email. So make them aware of social engineering. And social engineering is the art of manipulating, influencing, or deceiving you in order to gain control over your computer system. So it's those emails that you receive that may look like they're from a certain person, but they're not. There's training that's available for you to help spot phishing emails, and there's certain things that you need to do if you think that you've been a victim of clicking on an email. So some are easy to spot, but they are getting more sophisticated. Check for things like the grammar of an email, the tone, where you're expecting an email from that person at that point in time. Reporting promptly as well. So if a member of staff does click on or suspect they've clicked on an email or a link within an email, report it to your IT team as soon as possible, because time is of the essence. And if you report it quickly, they can take access, or if you're have access to, for example, your Microsoft tenant, there's steps that you can take. So resetting passwords, blocking sign-ons, etc. So again, it just needs to be done very quickly though, and encourage staff to notify you of when that's been done. So the key thing is to pause, to think and act. So cybersecurity begins when we pause a moment, think before clicking on a link in an email, and this simple act can prevent enormous disasters that can cripple a business. And that's just a bit about who we are. So if there's anything that you would like to discuss further, we do offer a free cybersecurity review for businesses. So yes, a free review of your security. Get in touch with me. I'm on LinkedIn or by any of the details. And I'll hand that over to Tony.
Thanks, Becky.
Thanks.
I'll share my screen.
I will stop presenting there.
Yeah, that should work if you share your screen now, Tony. There we go. I can see your indelible data now.
Great, thank you. So thanks, Becky. That was a really comprehensive view of cybersecurity. Where we come from, I'm the managing director of Indelible Data, and we're 9 people. We're based in Maryport, and rather than being the IT implementers, managed service providers, we do the testing. We're asked to come in and check out how good a security regime is in place. So we don't do the implementation. We leave that to reputable service providers such as David Allen and Becky and the team to do that. So we test ahead of that and test after it just to make sure things are in place. So we're well placed to see things that have been put in badly. We've seen lots of bad examples. We've seen lots of good examples. So my little presentation, I just want to show you the types of things that we do see. We'll be going over some of the same things that Becky's talked about, but I'll hopefully be able to sort of show some examples here and there of what we've seen. So we're a Cyber Essentials certification body, and that's a government-backed scheme to allow supply chain companies to know that a supplier company, has met a certain level of cybersecurity. And we'll be talking about that as well in the presentation. So we always get the question, why did someone attack us? And one of the key things we find that why companies are small companies, so small, medium-sized businesses are targeted, it's often that it won't happen to us attitude. You know, millions of businesses in the UK, why would it happen to me? And it's all very science fiction and things like that. Why would it happen to us? You know, we're a small family business making pies. Why would it happen to us? And because of that, there's a reluctance to invest time, money, and training because of the unlikely threat. So if we've done our job correctly today, we're going to show you that it is probably more likely than you expect. It's not to scaremonger. We don't go around saying it's imminent, but it's just to give you all the information you need to make a decision on what level of security your company would need. Smaller companies don't have any monitoring or little or no monitoring of attacks. So when people say to us, we haven't had a cyber attack in the last 5 years, our question is, how do you know? Are you monitoring these? Are you seeing attackers, once they're in systems, just take little bits here and there? They might have copied everything. without you even knowing, and it's on the black market, and competitors have now got their hands on it. And also, don't forget, we are stepping stones to a larger rise. In West Cumbria, in the nuclear supply chain, lots of small nuclear supply chain companies are all in touch with the larger nuclear establishments that the attackers really want hold of. So if they can masquerade as a smaller company by taking their online identity and get into the larger systems, then that's one major stepping stone that they've stepped on. So we have the 4 types of attackers. Online criminals, they're good for making money. They're the ones that will make money out of you. Hacktivists, they just might have an agenda. They don't like what your company's doing. They want to prove a point, discredit your company. Malicious insiders, disgruntled employees, they can connect to your systems. They're already connected to your systems. Do they have more access than they actually require? And then there's nation states. This is the well-funded countries that may think your company is of interest if you are in the supply chain of a larger company that's in your sites. I'm not saying you've got to put in all the protections to stop these guys, because there's tens of thousands of pounds worth of investment to be done to stop these. However, if you think you could be in their sites because of the nature of your business, then it may well be that maybe just step up a little bit more on monitoring to find out who's in our systems, rather than spend the thousands of pounds defending yourselves against things that you'd never be able to defend against. So just a brief introduction of Cyber Essentials scheme, and Becky's talked about most of these areas. It is thought that implementing the following controls would eliminate 80% of the common online threats. Now that's quite a big value. And it's broken down into different areas of cybersecurity, so boundaries and firewalls. So for your BT Home Hub to your Cisco ASA, if you're working in a company, secure configuration of your devices. Have you removed unnecessary accounts on those? Do things auto run when you plug them in? Those sorts of things. Get your access controls right, so no one should have more more authorization than they need to conduct their job. And also when people leave, that accounts should be removed. Malware protection, Becky went into that, and patch management. So this is where a vulnerability comes out. The vendors actually spotted this. They've put a patch in place, and now the clock's ticking. We recommend 14 days to implement that patch, because especially with the advent of AI, ChatGPT and things like that, once the patch is out there, you can run these AI routines on those patches, and that will tell you where the vulnerabilities are for those people that didn't patch and how to target them. So we say 14 days to do that. Each of these pillars has a set of controls, such as removing default passwords, having strong passwords, putting malware control in place, and then a policy. So you have a policy to follow all your security controls. Don't just throw them in and that's it. Have some form of intended outcomes for these particular controls you've put in. So Cyber Essentials asks you these questions. There's 50 plus questions, more. And if you just look down here, you'll see here, for example, one of the questions, are all updates applied for operating systems? Are they set to auto update? Yes or no? Are you updating things in 14 days? Yes or no? And it goes through all of those pillars that were mentioned on the previous slide. So if you want to see this, all these questions, to see how well you fare against these, you can just download it from our website, go through and check your company against them. You can then go to be certified if you wish, but if there's no major requirement to, then there's no need to. So Becky mentioned malware. The things that we're seeing more of are keyloggers, ransomware, and credential harvesting, often delivered through phishing emails. And it all sounds very much James Bond sort of things, you know, how do they do this? Well, this is a free tool. This just appeared here. If you can see on the left, all the users that have clicked on that link and installed something silently without them knowing, these are the users. And these are all the things you can actually do to the system, depending on the patch level of that system. So we can see here the keystrokes typed. We can look at program activity, look at the clipboard, all those sorts of things. But we can see on the right-hand side that these are all free, some of them like 30-day trials, but that's enough for anyone, any 14-year-old kid can try their arm at this and just have a go. So when ransomware strikes, you might never have seen anything like this. I'm not sure how it's going to look on a screen share, but we have a lab. We're able to go in, detonate malware. It's quite good, quite fun to see in a lab environment. I appreciate it's not fun to see in a real life environment. But this is the type of thing you'd see, and you will see that it is quite scary. And as Becky mentioned earlier, have some form of incident response plan straight away. You don't just sit and stare at the screen for an hour wondering what to do. You know, have your list of people you need to call. So this is it's just me with a camera pointing at our screen. So what happens is, in the morning, people switch the computers on. It immediately rebooted and did a check disk like this. And this is part of the pettier strain from a few years, but then that appears, which really shocking. And then you're greeted with a method of how to pay the ransom. You know, if you purchased your key, enter it below. You know, so that's a heart-sinking moment when that happens to a business. So some form of plan ahead of time is certainly recommended, but the idea is not to have it happen in the first place. So there are things called malware creation toolkits. So the reason I'm talking about this is to give an idea of what's out there and why it's not so, you know, it's not like the movies where you have to be expert hackers and crackers to do things. These things exist already. They just need access to, and on the dark web, on the Tor network, things like this exist. So this is the TOX creation kit. So if you see what happens there is, you'll just say you register for it. You create your malware in 2 simple steps. You enter a ransom amount. You can upload a list of like an email list. I can get ones pre-made already. So you could be targeting golf clubs, owners where major directors work, or you could just be spamming the world. Millions go out. But all you do is you upload that list. You enter your cause. So it could be whatever your activist cause is. It could be Save the Whale or something like that. Now the site takes 20% of the ransom. So that's how they're making their money. So it's well worth them setting up a decent site. It's just a point and shoot malware creation site. And that would just go out, and they would pay you how much money came in, and they'd take 20% of that. Becky also mentioned phishing. This is a live phishing email that came into our site, especially with the file sharing systems going on, Microsoft Office, Box, those sorts of things. There's plenty of people expecting documents to be shared with them. So attackers just pretending to be one of those. I've sent you a file to review the document. It comes in on an email like this. I'll send over a document for you to look at. It's on your OneDrive. Can you just look at it for me? If you're not thinking, you know, you're busy, you're stressed on something else, you want to have a quick look at that. You're greeted with a sign-in, but it's not actually the sign-in. It's the attacker's sign-in, because that link you clicked on the previous email took you to this page. You didn't actually notice it wasn't going to a Microsoft account. It was going to the attacker's site. Complete that. And now they have your credentials. So how can an attacker pretend to be another site? Well, it's actually very trivial. It's so easy. You could even do a screen grab of a website and you could have that image as your main page. It's the URL that's going to be tricky to replicate. But sometimes attackers make it look close enough. So last night I went on to a URL domain place and looked for HSBC Bank, and all these are available. So I could have created a website called HSBC Bank Accountants or hsbcbank.io or bank.org. Someone down here has got hsbc.online and make an offer for that. I don't know how much they want for that. But if I was to present what looked like the HSBC Bank front page with a login credentials on it, and it was HSB Bank Online, would you know that that wasn't HSBC Bank's website address? So that's what they do. They get things that look very similar, just because no one knows every URL. And one thing to watch with phishing as well is people are lulled into this false sense of security because they see the padlock. So we have a site called cyberessentials.xyz. It's got a padlock. That doesn't mean that belongs to us. All that means is that that is an encrypted channel. So anything you put on there will be encrypted. So lots of people have said to us that, oh, I went on that site, it had a padlock and everything. So it must have been their site. No, the padlock doesn't mean that. The padlock can mean that if they've gone for the extended validation. So Indelible Data, for example, have gone for the extended validation, where we've had to give there's a central registry. They want evidence of company incorporation, photographs, or a photocopy of certain documents. So they know that that site belongs to you. So if you go onto our website and click on the padlock, you'll see it's a valid certificate issued to Indelible Data. So you know that is our site. Most of the big player sites will have this. So if you're on the government website, major company websites, have a little look in that padlock. Click on it just to check it's actually theirs. Don't be fooled by just it being a padlock. On its own, it doesn't mean anything, apart from it's encrypted. And then there's why the attackers choose us. And our staple response to that was because you're vulnerable. So what does that mean? Well, there are all sorts of freely available tools out there. Shodan.io is one such thing. I'm going to attempt to actually do something live here as well. So what Shodan is think of it as Google for hacking. It has gone around all the sites in the world, IP addresses. So these are your IP addresses of your routers. It's gone around every single one. And it's asked, what are you? And then it's done a little scan, a little vulnerability assessment of that, and it records anything that it finds might be vulnerable. So in this example here, Windows XP is vulnerable. It's never had a security update for years. There's paint by numbers, YouTube tutorials on these things. So any 11-year-old kid can hack a Windows XP machine now. They just need to know where one is. And you can go to here, type WinXP in the top, and all the ones around the world will come back. And changing your default passwords and things, this is just an example of that. So for example, in Google, I just typed Drtech, which is a well-used firewall router. You could put BT Home Hub, you could put anything in here, but what are the default passwords for these? Great, very easy. Now all I need is to know where these are. So you go to your Shodan, you type Drtech Vigo, and it will come back with the 457,000 Drtech Vigos for you to have a go with the default passwords. So you don't do this manually. You've got a freely available tool, import all these IP addresses, put the default username and passwords on, and just let it go for a month. And if you were someone who hadn't changed the default password and the console is accessible from the internet, you will fall victim. So that's because you were vulnerable. They weren't targeting you whatsoever. You just had a vulnerable device. And we can do the same here for Windows 7 devices that are on the internet. You know, there's a login screen from a Windows 7 device at this IP address. So all these are absolutely, totally accessible by anyone, kids, criminals. So you don't want to be on here. That's basically it. And that's where, you know, consulting with the likes of Becky's team, David Allen, they'll make sure that your machine isn't on those. Your firewall is implemented correctly. The rules are correct. Your access controls are correct. So to wrap up, you just need to make yourself a harder target. There's low-hanging fruit. Everything in Cyber Essentials checklist is low-hanging fruit. Patch your systems, put in malware protection. You can test your security is working at icore.org if you wanted to test your malware. These are internationally recognized test files that all the major brands use. So you can download a malware file and see if it's caught. Just make sure you're on the right site. Enable multi-factor authentication, very important. I got something through the other day, and I actually typed, it came through by text message. No, sorry, it came through Messenger. It came through Messenger from a friend saying, "There's a video that's got me on it. It's really funny. Have a look at it on Facebook." Without thinking, I clicked on it, and then the Facebook login came in. Without thinking, I put my username and password in. And when I got to that, I thought, that isn't Facebook. That someone's got my credentials. However, I have multi-factor authentication. So that gave me plenty of time to go in and change my password, because the attacker didn't know the second step to get that information, didn't have the the text message that came through. So that was a lifesaver for me. That would have been quite embarrassing for a security consultant to have their Facebook profile hacked, but that was 7 or 8 days ago. So it can happen to anyone. Happen to me. Have a strong password. Password managers are useful. They've been in the news lately because there's been a breach. LastPass had a security breach, so I'm not here to tell you which one to buy, which one not to buy, but they are useful because it means you don't write them down. It also means that when you visit a site that it knows, it will pre-fill your password. So if an attacker's site appears, something that looks like HSBC Bank but isn't, the password manager won't try and complete it. So that tells you that, that's not a valid site. Review your privacy settings. Think about what you post across your social and professional accounts. Are you telling people what sort of systems you have, that you're away from the office, all those sorts of things? Because the phishing messages can be more convincing. If someone was to know I was going on holiday to wherever, a phishing email to second in command here could just be Tony, before he went on holiday to wherever, said I should contact you about this. He wants you to download this file, for example. Very convincing. How else would anyone know that I'm going to Mauritius for my holidays? And it would be right. Okay, I'll do that. Of course I will. Unbeknown to the second in command here, I'd posted on Facebook where I was going, or LinkedIn or something like that. There is somewhere to report your emails and any scams to. Report at phishing.gov.uk, and any suspicious text messages go to 7726. But ultimately, if you can just conduct a security risk assessment, it doesn't have to be forensic, but just get the things that you care about, what's important to you, and what's of most priority, and get those defended first with the budget that you have. Look at other devices connecting to your networks or accessing your data through office contractors, staff, personal devices. Are they secured? And then brainstorm some scenarios. Some simple ones could be, what happens if your mobile phone's stolen whilst it's unlocked? You know, my mobile phone, if it was unlocked, it's got Teams, it's got access to all my Office drives and things like that. A lot of data on there. But you know, we've taken the second step of that. Anyone tries to open that, there's a second password to enter. And as I mentioned earlier, if ransomware does hit, what are the steps to eradicate it? Who do you call? Where are these phone numbers? What's the next step? Get all that documented. And then let all your staff know about it. Deliver security awareness training, what you'd expect them to do, the types of things that happen, think before you click, all those sorts of things. List the incidents that are most likely to occur. That could be theft, loss of device, ransomware attack. Who do you have to tell contractually? Is it a supplier? Is it in the contract that they must know within a few days? Is it the information commissioner if he's got personal information? And then you can make the decision whether to, if you want to make it more formal, there are certifications to go for. And ISO 27001 is an information security management standard, and Cyber Essentials is more of a technical standard. And that gives you a baseline of, you know, where you're at when you've got these standards, and they're a mechanism to move on as well. And there's my contact details. And should you need any further information from us.
Brilliant. Thank you both for that. Could I get you just to drop both of your emails just in the chat there? That would be great if people want to grab them off there. I think it's really useful to hear all those messages, because having been in this sort of speaking to people like you over the for a while now, I now get what you're saying, but I spent many years running my small business and thinking, they're not interested in me. My turnover's only X. What could they possibly want from this sort of attitude? And then now knowing that that is definitely not the case. Also working for a council now, I know one of my friends wanted to take their laptop away and they were going to Norway, and they were asked questions like, how close are you to proximity to the Russian border? And he was thinking, I've got a really low level job in sort of Cumbria County Council. But then now we see that link that probably the easiest way to get on gov.uk is through a low level council laptop, which seemingly no one cares about. So it's really interesting that you highlight the risks that are there for everyday people and how they can very quickly escalate. Or as you said, Rebecca, about just the embarrassment for a company. You know, there's so many things when we're seeing people set up companies that they have to worry about. And if in the first 6 months, when I know from my own experience, you're just constantly running around trying to make sure you've got money coming in and customers are happy and the product's happening, then to log in one morning and see, Tony, that sort of faith of doom and think this is another thing on my job list which I do not need, and could sort of seriously quite damage your reputation, whether that's a small local company which seemingly doesn't operate even outside of one town. You know, that could even be worse because it'd be harder to come back from that.
Yeah, and it's something that you do need to give, serious consideration to. And people think, as you said, "Oh, I am too small. Why would they bother with me?" But it is that reputational damage, and especially as a new business, you're wanting to build that and build your client base and build that trust. And people expect that you have the settings and security in place to look after their data. If you thought a business weren't looking after your data, you wouldn't want to do business with them. And so, yeah, it's about getting early doors those security settings in place, really simple to do, and just getting the right IT in place and making sure that your full IT infrastructure, your data, your laptop, everything is as secure as can be. And it doesn't have to cost much. It can be quite simple steps that we've mentioned earlier that will help protect your business data.
Yeah, I think the other thing is two-factor authentication can seem really annoying, and until like you've suffered the consequences of it, and then you realize putting Google Authenticator or just getting a text message and putting a code across is pretty, it's pretty good from that point of view. Sarah, just yeah, as you say, so I see in the chat there, Sarah's put really scary types of mechanisms scanners can use, and that is, it is kind of like we want to, like, I'm busy shutting off iPads and turning everything down, but it's not to be too scared by it. But again, interesting what you said, Tony. Like, with the best will in the world, this can happen, even if you have taken sort of quite a few of the basic level approaches to securing yourself.
Yeah.
But the next stage is, what do I do? At the minute, I'm sort of like sat here thinking, well, if it was this works computer, I've got my IT number here, and I just go, oh, not my problem. If it was this, which is my own personal phone, which would have way more personal cost to me, like financially, if anyone got in there, because as everyone, we run all our lives off there, I wouldn't actually know who to phone. Like, if it was specific to HSBC, I'd sort of think, oh, right, good, I'll phone them, or Monzo, I'd go online. But if it was just like generally, I'm in trouble here, something's happened to my phone, I wouldn't really know where my checklist of right, I've got the next couple of hours to kind of to go for it and minimize this problem. So action plans, definitely what we need.
That's right. That's something that we've done with large and small businesses, are action plans. So we'll have a scenario, and it can be something as simple as, I mentioned the phone's been stolen out of your hand whilst looking at Google Maps in London. Okay, it's only when you look at things like that you think it's stolen. Well, I'd ring IT. No, I wouldn't. I don't have a phone, and I don't have any. And in fact, I don't know any telephone numbers because they're in my phone. And you just fall at the first hurdle. Now that's an extreme one, but just going through, where are your backups? Have your backups been tested? When you want to get back from ransomware, it's only when you actually start to do these things, you see all the, like, do a dry run, if you like. You see all the potential issues that could really cause you problems on the day. And some of the larger companies that have had a breach that I've been called out to sort of help with, I've had to help them write their message on Twitter because, for example, particular companies being hacked. Messages have gone out to all the clients saying, to pay this invoice, please, and with the company headed email and things like that, and the proper email address as well. It takes one person to go onto Twitter and say, has company X been hacked? So you've got to have a look at that. You've got to be looking to see, am I being talked about on Twitter, and how do I respond to that correctly? So it's things like, we are investigating this. We take sensitive information very seriously. We are looking into it. No, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. But even just having someone monitoring, because as I say, reputation is quite a big deal.
Yeah.
And you might not think about it. You might not think about just looking on Facebook to see if anyone's talking about your company because they've had an email from it that they shouldn't have had.
And I think it's the other thing is, and I'm massively guilty of this, is that you can't rely on people to do the right thing, either customer or staff. Obviously, as staff, I'm definitely not guilty of this, but I know that there's several times on private email or sort of like bank accounts or just log-ons to, like, I don't know, like Nike.com to buy some trainers, and it'll flash up, welcome back, your password has been in a data leak, would you like to change it? And I think, nah, like, that'll take at least 2 clicks to update the password, and don't. And plus, it's just like, my trainer obsession on Nike.com. And then you unpick and you think, actually, that 30 seconds of changing it, if they're even bothering to tell me, and as a customer, I'm going, nah, not really going to bother. The onus is very much on the company, isn't it? Because you can't rely on your customers, and definitely you can't rely on the good nature of the hackers out there.
Yeah, and one of the things that we do, because I've got access to large repositories of passwords that have been found in breaches and things like that. And I've just run a routine this morning on a company to see if any of their employees are on it. And of course, you employees do come back because everyone's been in a password breach at some point, from Nike to Sony to LinkedIn to whatever. The first thing we do when we see a password and a user account is try it on other devices and try it on other websites as well, because people may use the same one on different ones. So the first thing a hacker would do, if they find your breaching your password in a LinkedIn breach, they'll try it on your Amazon account, they'll try it on Facebook, they'll try on everything.
Yeah.
Because people do share the same passwords on different accounts. It's human nature.
Yeah. Well, as we talked about, scary, but also I think there's a lot there to help us be aware of, and also some great routes out of how to make it as unscary as possible in this age. And as you touched on there quite a few times, and I'm sure you'll be able to back this up, Tony, like a lot of the times it's not the massive scheme which is definitely trying to get millions. Well, that is devastating in itself. It could just be like a load of kids who are way more savvy than I'll ever be, thinking, "What should we do? It's Thursday night. He's got the info. Let's just try ruin a few people's sort of days." And while it's kind of humorous and like sort of not going to cost you millions on one level, it's still really annoying, and who knows where that's going to lead. So we can never be too careful. Thank you both for your time, and thank you to everyone else who logged on today. Do keep watching back and see whether we've got any other webinars coming up which might be useful for you. We're trying to get at least one a month. We've got a few in-person events happening at the BIPC in Cumbria now, and we'll be putting this on our YouTube channel, where you can find some of our other experts in residence who've kindly given their time to try and make your business journey a little bit smoother or answer some of those questions. We'll be putting our information on this video as well, so if you want to get in touch with us, that would be great. But I hope it's as sunny as it is here, blinding me where you all are, and have a great rest of the week, and thanks again to you too.
1